showing us the proper way. So if you're living with the times, making sure your daily life's divine, yeah, you gotta watch Rabbi Benny's Torah videos today. You know, with all the partying and questionable things going on around this time of year, you'd think the rabbis would have established a Yom Kippur Day of Forgiveness after this new year. I'm just saying. Welcome to the Cabo Jewish Center's video blog, Torah portion of Shemot. Be sure to check out our new Cholent Face of the Week feature at the end of this week's video, as well as a plug for our week sponsor. So this week we begin the second of the 5 books called Shemot, or commonly known as Exodus, because it discusses...
Excellent challenge?
No, it discusses...
Excellent pizza?
What? No, it discusses the exodus of our ancestors from Egypt. What are these kids eating for breakfast? Anyways, after Jacob and his children pass away, things begin getting tough for the kids and grandkids. They become slaves. Now, I know that some may suggest that for Jewish people to be enslaved, all it takes is making them do manual labor for minimum wage. You know, for being a heart surgeon, schlepping for $12 an hour is a violation of human rights. It's slavery! But that's not actually what happened. The slavery and suffering under the Egyptian oppression was of the most difficult that we ever had to endure. It got to a point that Pharaoh, upon hearing from his stargazers that a Jewish child was to be born to redeem the Jewish people, yeah, Pharaoh. So we were like out looking at the stars and stuff. It was really cool. Yeah, we saw a Jewish kid be born and take down your empire. Or it was like some totally awesome shooting star, or maybe a double rainbow. Whatever, dude. So the king decreed that every newborn boy be ripped away from his mother and tossed into the Nile River to die. And then Moses was born. He miraculously survived the decree by being placed in a basket floating on the Nile River. And then when the princess finds him, he's brought back to the palace where he grows up as a royal prince. Of course, when he gets older and displays his leadership qualities and deep love for his Jewish brothers and sisters, God chooses him to take his beloved children out of Egypt. But why does the story of our Exodus seem to be obsessed with this river called the Nile? Even the ancient Egyptians, they worship this Nile River. Dude, it's got like a totally awesome surf. No, it doesn't. It's a boring, crocodile-infested river. Oh, it doesn't? Must have been like a shooting star or something. So what does this river really represent? Hasidic teachings explain that of all places in the world, Egypt was unique. Since they didn't have rainfall during the year, the only way they can grow their crops and produce food and livelihood was whenever the water level of the Nile River would rise and it would flow into the fields and the gardens. It was probably the only place in the world where you would hear things like, "Hooray, it's flooding again!" In Israel, it was very different. The fields in Israel depended on their yearly rain. Because of this, the people of Israel were forced to look up at the heavens when they needed sustenance. The heavenly rains reminded its inhabitants that the true provider of everything is God above. In Egypt, however, the people never looked up. What are you talking about? I'm always looking up at stars and other cool stuff in like our universal, stargazery galactic atmospheres. Okay, in Egypt, barely anybody ever looked up. In fact, the only direction they ever looked was down at the ground. It seemed that the all-powerful provider of Egypt's needs was this great Nile River. To the Egyptians, there was no need to look to a higher existence for blessings. Everything they needed was right below their feet. Look, everything we need is below. We have tomato sauce, Lego, gefilte fish. This is what got Pharaoh and the Egyptians so incredibly frustrated with this family of Hebrews. The Jews believed in a higher authority that exists above everything, even above nature itself. Success and sustenance was dependent only on God above, and to be blessed, one was required to turn to Him and Him alone. Oh look, a shoe, a menorah. Oh, that's where my glasses are hiding. The Egyptians made it their business to ingrain and cultivate these Jews with a different point of view. Pharaoh's command to toss Jewish baby boys into the Nile had very deep symbolic tones. He wished for every Jewish boy to drown and become submerged in this Nile River mentality. Worshipping the Nile was about worshipping nature itself and defying that which is higher than nature. Of course, for the Jewish people, this was terrible suffering, and God, through His miracles, redeemed them from this torture. The lesson lesson is quite clear. In our days, Western culture idolizes physical and financial servitude. The American dream says that the more effort you give and the harder you work, the bigger your house, car, and boat will be. Too many parents are guilty of throwing their children into this Nile River lifestyle, pressuring these precious Yiddish kinderach to look down and aggressively pursue fortune, fame, and success. But the part about depending on God Almighty and His blessings, that focus to look upwards, is all but forgotten. It's time for us to raise our heads up and proudly live by those values that our Zaydis and Bubbies died to preserve. The Niles, economies, fiscal cliffs, dollars, and pesos that gush through our lives cannot dictate the bright and blessed future that God has in store for us. Let us reach out to God above by strengthening our faith and our commitment to Him. Then we will truly free ourselves from our Egyptian slavery. Shabbat Shalom, and have a wonderful week. So you've got all these airline or credit card miles and you would much rather have cash to spend, or you want an awesome traveling deal. Do you look at what's in the fridge? Of course not! You call Miles Marketeer. They provide everything travel related for competitive prices, and if you mention code Cabo Miles, they'll pass on some of the proceeds to us, the Cabo Jewish Center.